set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me.
Hello, Miami. Thank you so much for watching 305 Sports Now. This is 305 Live. And guys, you know what week it is. Yes, it is National Championship Coverage Week. As yes, your Miami Hurricanes, are in the National Championship. And they're not just playing for the National Championship, they're playing for the National Championship at home. All right. Which is pretty interesting because the young man that I'm bringing on right now, okay, you know the face, you know the voice, you've seen him everywhere, and he has also been to 2 out of the 3 of the most raucous atmospheres in the college football playoffs for your Miami Hurricanes, and that is, of course, Mr. Brad Tejeda. Brad, thank you so much for joining me, man. I'm really happy.
Well, man, appreciate you as always for having me on, man. You always do great stuff for our Miami Hurricanes fan base, man. It's always good talking Canes football with the fans, and as you as always. And like you mentioned, man, 2 out of the 3 playoff games I've been able to experience, and I gotta say, man, it's been the top 2 experiences I've ever been, and I've been to some big games, and I think anybody that's been there can definitely vouch for those.
Yeah, so I just want to let everybody know that's in the chat right now. I will get to your comments. You guys know I always do that. So we'll get to some chatter. Of course, thanks for Chris and Juan, who knows in all our shows, by the way, for chiming in. Always a great supporter of all our content. Yeah, so one of the things I want to talk to you about is because, like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I don't travel. All right, I really don't travel, but you travel quite a bit, and you always bring back a lot of insight. You bring some great airport stories as well. I've seen you on Locked On Canes. We talked to Dono about it. So 100,000 people in College Station. Supposedly, they only allowed 3,000 Miami fans to buy tickets. What's your take on it? Was the stadium more full of Canes fans than you thought it would be? And also, what was that atmosphere like over at College Station in the A&M game?
You know, first and foremost, you know, you talk about the attendance record over at College Station. I believe it ended up being the most attended college football game in a playoff at the time, which I believe it hit almost 104,000 to your point. But going back to the ticket allotment, it kind of, the situation kind of reminded me of back in 2014 or 2015 when we played, or I'm sorry, not 2014, 2015, 2023. With the first time we played Florida in Gainesville, when essentially we were supposed to get like anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 tickets allotted to Miami. And then, of course, the University of Florida turned around and said, hey, yeah, Miami could get up to 7,000, but we're going to cut that in half and we're going to get them about 3,500. That's similar situation to happen with College Station. We did get around like 2,500, 3,000 fans, but we could have got more if Texas A&M would have allowed it. But we know, I think that was the first game that I think not only SEC fans realized, but I think all national media realized that the whole narrative of Miami fans didn't travel. We kind of nipped that in the bud because I think even College Station fans were really surprised not only of how many people showed up, but how loud we were at times throughout the football game. And then obviously the impact that our team made on the game. You know, even the 12th man, as they call it, it wasn't enough to stop the Miami Hurricanes. And at the end of the day, when that clock hit 0, all 104,000 fans, they were either gone or they were giving respect to the University of Miami. And you got to give yourself a pat on the back for that.
Yeah, I heard they're very nice over there at College Station. What was your experience?
Honestly, man, they were too nice. You couldn't talk any crap. Me personally, there were times where I was jumping up and down, like said, like, just trying to like talk any type of mess, and like just everybody just was just like, yeah, that was a great play, or man, you guys are gonna do something in the next round. We hope nothing but the best. Like everything was high fives, and you know, go get them for the next round, offering beers and drinks before and after games. It was the same thing as the first time I went to College Station. We played them, and great fan base. Definitely the complete opposite of Ole Miss fans. We'll get to that game.
Oh yes, we definitely will. I really want to talk about that one. Okay, so the win, seeing the game, you know, from the comfort of my home and so on, and other people, we were a little frustrated with the passing game, but we know the win was really kicking. We saw what happened with the kicking game as well. The game should have been a little more lopsided than what it looked at the end of the game based on the score. How bad was the wind, you know, from you being at the stadium itself Yeah, I mean, we could tell it was blowing from the flags, but how much did it affect the passing game in general?
The wind was a huge factor. Anyone like myself that was at the game, the higher you sat in that stadium, the more of the wind you could actually feel. There were actually a lot of people, like my guy Steve Kim, as always, he was actually on the lower bowl of that game. And when we were talking, he couldn't feel the wind as much as someone like me and other fans who were kind of on the second and third deck could feel. But when you saw that football game and when you saw how everything played out, there was a big reason why there was only two passes over 20 yards in the air, one from each team. Marcel Reed was able to complete his. Obviously, Bex was a little overthrown. But I mean, from an overview of where I was standing, both footballs, I mean, the curve that both of those football took when you threw the football, you could tell why there were not very many passes in the game. And then I think one of the reasons why we were shooting ourselves in the foot. And now, obviously, any Miami fan that were watching the game, it was kind of like, hey, anytime we ran the ball, especially in the tackles, we were getting 10, 12 yards, especially on first down. Why are we not doing it consistently? I talked a little bit about it on the Alex Donna show on Locked On Canes. The day before the game, I had the pleasure of talking to Shannon Dawson at the team hotel. And you could tell, he was going into that football game kind of wanting to drop his nuts. Like he heard the chatter. He heard the chatter of the SEC and Texas A&M this. Miami's not prepared. We haven't played anybody, and he was like, "Dude, SMU, Louisville, some of these teams we played against, they have the teams, the matchups, the players very similar to what people are making this A&M team to be." And we're gonna try to put on a show. We're gonna try to drop 30, 40 points. So I knew going into that game, like we were gonna see the Mally Cat early. We were gonna throw some things at this A&M team early to try to get up early. Unfortunately, that win the day before wasn't how it was the day of the game. So I think going into it, he had a game plan, and I think in that first half he kind of stayed with that game plan as you saw. And as the game winded in that second half, he kind of had to adjust, and our guy Carson Beck, kind of had to say, "Hey, man, let's run the ball a little bit more." And as we saw, Mark Fletcher and the team really came up, and Bryce Fitzgerald had that clutch interception at the end.
Speaking of that interception, 3,000 fans in general, but it sounded pretty loud when that Bryce Fitzgerald hit the pick. What were your emotions? Because it's different when you see it on TV. I went nuts, but it's different when you see it on TV and different when you're there, feeling the atmosphere and feeling the fan base and and so on. So, what was your reaction? What was everybody else's reaction around you when Bryce Fitzgerald sealed the game for the Canes?
It was kind of like a finally moment. Like it was like kind of a pinch me reaction where it was just like it was too good to be true. This was the first game where not only everyone in the country, especially media and SEC, were really against Miami, saying they weren't going to have a chance. But this was a huge opportunity for us Miami fans to kind of prove to the country, like, hey, we've been hollering, the last 3 weeks of us getting into this college football playoff. We were able to get over Notre Dame. This is our chance to prove it. This is our statement game for everyone around the country, including us. So being able to go into a hostile environment, one of the craziest environments in all of college football. I even had the pleasure of going to Midnight Yell the day before, got a picture with Pat McAfee. And I mean, the whole experience, I mean, it's from top to bottom exactly what you hear about. I mean, there's nothing like an SEC environment like Texas A&M. I could see maybe something like Death Valley over at LSU could probably compare, but being able to go in that environment, doing what we did, and being able to come out with a win, and getting down to the final play, these are things that in the past Miami wasn't able to accomplish. I don't want to kind of go too backwards, but I mean, between the Notre Dame at the beginning of the game, going through the Florida gauntlet and going undefeated, and then before you even hit your two losses in Louisville and SMU, I mean, I don't think a lot of fans realize we were so behind the eight ball with those two buys back to back so early in the season. This team has played a lot of football without any rest, and going into that first game in College Station, we needed that rest very bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously A&M had a lot more rest than us, and I think it kind of bit them in the butt. But at the end of the day, Miami came out with a dub, and as we see in college football, every single week, it's hard to get that W. As long as you get the win, it doesn't matter what the scoreboard says, what the stat says. You get to move on to the next round. You get that $4 million bonus for for your college, which obviously it's been adding up for us.
Hmm.
And we got to move on to that next round in Ohio State.
Yeah, absolutely. At the Cotton Bowl, which another game I also enjoyed watching. I was out of town. I was in Tennessee when I saw that game, and I was cheering. And it's funny though. When I was out of town, I didn't realize how many other people hate Ohio State. Like I have people from Alabama, from Tennessee, saying from South Carolina. I don't like the Canes, but man, I really hate Alabama. I really hate Ohio State. So that was that was interesting. My buddy Q, who does a great job at the I Hate Football podcast, and he does a great job, College Football Blitz over in the FTSN network. He said that the stadium was 50-50 over in Texas. It was basically split down the middle between Ohio State and Miami fans. In the Ole Miss game at the Fiesta Bowl, it didn't seem that way. I felt like Ole Miss was about, I would say 65-35 in terms of ratio. You're nodding your head like you agreed. How well did they travel, and was it obnoxious to hear them cheer throughout the whole game? Because for me, I found them annoying.
Nah, I mean, first and foremost, going to that Ohio State game, talking to people that were at the game, they pretty much told me that once Keontae Scott had that interception in the second quarter, that kind of took the whole game. The fan base of Ohio State after that interception, they were pretty much quiet the rest of the game. Now going to the Ole Miss game, going back to SEC, right? SEC fans, they definitely travel. You don't take that quote lightly. There were a lot of Jackson Darts all over the place. It seemed like
Okay.
every guy that was Ole Miss had the Jackson Dart haircut, had the puffer vest cut off. They all looked the same. They all acted the same. They were all obnoxious. They tried to act nice, but then as soon as some alcohol got involved or the closer it got to kickoff, you started to see their true colors, and they definitely were a little obnoxious. But I will say, 70-30 probably in that stadium.
Wow.
But again, we did travel. I think it was another one of those instances where between the airfare, man, I know a lot of fans that were able to travel. I mean, you're forking up over 600 to a grand just for a flight, and then you're talking $300 to $800 for a ticket. Then your hotel. I mean, it gets pricey. And you're talking about a game that was on a what, Thursday or Friday or a Thursday. So again, you're juggling 4 or 5 different things. So you can only imagine anybody that has a family or kids like myself. It's very hard to juggle so many things like that and have the opportunity to go to a game like that. So I already understood that we probably weren't going to have the turnout that people thought we were. But I will say this, after that football game, when the clock hit 0, it was so gratifying to see 3/4 of a stadium wiped out clean with nobody in the stands. And it's just nothing but Miami Hurricane fans cheering, celebrating, jumping up and down, crying. I mean, confetti all over the place. Just the overall atmosphere of the game was incredible. Being able to talk to the coaches and some of the players before the game at the hotel, and then also being able to celebrate with some of the parents and the players at the hotel after the football game. It was an amazing feeling, man. Something that you really can't take for granted. Anyone that was at that game, man. Like I said before, if you have the opportunity, if you got the money to go to these games and travel, please do it, man. It's one in a lifetime opportunity. I would do it 10 times out of 10 if I could do it all over again, man. But it was awesome. A lot of great fans, a lot of great people got to meet. And of course, we got out with another victory with our Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. When the Hail Mary, when the referees didn't pull the trigger and pull the flag this time, on the Ole Miss side, what was the fan reaction? They must have been fuming in reference to what happened.
Oh, they were fuming throughout the game with some of the no call penalties, but then of course they didn't want to look at it on our side when our guy Keelan Marion was getting held on almost every play.
Yeah.
It seemed like, but no, they were definitely pissed. But then on our end, as soon as the play happened, I mean, the first 5 to 10 seconds, it was straight quiet. No one cheered, no one celebrated. Everyone had that moment going back to Ohio State back in the Fiesta Bowl where it was just like, all right, where's the flag? Here comes the flag. And I mean, from being there inside the stadium, you couldn't really tell if he really held that much, but then going back and watching it, on TV and seeing some of the screenshots, it definitely could have gone either way. I'm glad they let it play just like most of the things they've done throughout the football game. But yeah, it was quiet the first 15, 20 seconds. And then after that, it was nothing but jumping, screaming, crying, and people just going nuts all throughout the stadium.
Yeah, on my side, I remember how long it took for them to announce that Ole Miss had beaten Georgia. So I was just waiting for that situation where the referees would stop everything, and I was like, please, it's over, right? And I was like, it's over, it's over, it's over, it's over. Regarding pass interference, like, I mean, Lane Kiffin was crying on Twitter. You know, I'm like, bro, you're not a school, bro. Just get it over with and leave these guys alone. No one really calls. It's true what everybody says. No one really calls pass interference on Hail Marys. It's usually a hand fight all the way through. You know, and even regardless, Brad, it's not like the NFL was a spot foul. The best they could have done was a 20 with 1 second left. I mean, and the chance of them scoring would have been very minimal, even in that situation, because at the end of the day, Miami would just drop 8, and they could only really throw to 5. You know, so that would have been you know, I think at the end of the day, Miami would have ended up winning that game regardless, even if they did throw the flag in general. But I'm glad the referees kept it in the pocket, let it play out, and ended up winning that football game. Should have been won by more. Should have been a 2-touchdown game. All right, a lot of 4 dropped interceptions that led to scores by Ole Miss. That stunk, and that Nez Cooper false start, which took their 3rd and 7 to 3rd and 12, which I think changed the play calling situation, which could have been another 7 or at least another 3 for Miami. Also led to a score as well. But this upcoming game, man, we can't make those mistakes, man. We can't drop any picks against this team, and we can't get any ridiculous penalties that could cost us a field position, because we're taking on a team that doesn't beat themselves, right? Indiana, although on a blue chip ratio, Miami leapfrogs them leaps and bounds. This is a very well coached team, and they've come into the playoffs looking a little invincible. What's your take on Indiana, and what is your perception on how to beat them?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's definitely been playing top-notch football, very clean, fundamental. When you turn on the tape, they do everything to the T, right? Anything that you would want to teach from a fundamental standpoint and how it would look and be successful, they've been able to do that all year. You talk about a penalty standpoint, they're top 5 in the nation and fewest penalties a game, where Miami is 103rd in the nation. So you're talking about a night and day situation. But, you know, going back to the games that Miami has played throughout the playoffs, I think we can all agree as Miami fans, we have yet to play a sound, clean football game, where Indiana has done the complete opposite. Seems like they've done nothing but play clean, sound football. And yet both teams have been able to come out on top. And I could argue and almost, you know, factually state that Miami's had the tougher road to get where they're at today compared to Indiana. You talk about a Miami team that's beaten 4 top 10 teams already this football season, 3 in the last 3 games. But I think the most crucial thing for this football game is definitely going to have to come down to the trenches. These are going to be 2 teams that you already know what they're doing. I think going back to prior opponents that Miami had, I think one of the keys were we never knew what to game plan for, right? You had mobile quarterbacks like Marcel Reed and Trinidad Chambers, who could do a lot on the ground with their feet and also do a lot in the air. And they had a lot of great wide receivers around them to be able to make that happen. Then they also had guys like a Keywan Lacey, who was probably one of the most dominant running backs in all of college football, behind maybe Jeremiah Love, who we also faced, right? When you look at this Indiana team, they don't necessarily have the star players like some of the guys that we've been talking about, but they do, from a fundamental standpoint, execute very well. I think you're going to have to pressure Fernando Mendoza, very similar to how you did when he played over at Cal just last season. When you look at the defensive ends like Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, I think their bend, their quickness, and kind of their double moves that they like to do is really going to catch these tackles off balance. I think that is going to be one thing that I think we'll be able to use to our advantage. I also like that Indiana hasn't really been tested much, in my opinion. Very similar to the Ole Miss matchup this previous week, right? People were talking about how great Ole Miss was compared to Miami. Well, Ole Miss's last 2 opponents in the playoffs before they faced Miami were Tulane and Georgia, 2 teams they faced already in the regular season, 2 teams that they were able to prepare for, right? When you look at Indiana, they just played Oregon, another team that they played in the regular season that they were able to prepare for. Other than that, they didn't really play anybody all throughout the football season. A Penn State team that they beat by 3 points. Other than that, you had a common opponent in Ohio State that they won 13-10, and we saw what we did with them just a couple weeks ago. So I like our chances a lot.
Yeah. I have some my one of my concerns. First of all, is for the health of Damari Brown. I hope he does get to play. I think he's going to be a great asset to the team, and Frederic as well. But my concern is Indiana's receivers. I've heard them be called speedy. I don't think they're that fast. I don't think they're guys that get very good separation. But they're adults. Okay, they're older and they're bigger. And I think even though I think Jabari Antoine is a dog, as well. I think it could be a problem for him being basic. I think he's still 18. The oldest he could be is 19. Taking on a guy that's like 23 years old and may have a 3 to 4 inch height advantage on him. Do you see it that way as far as maybe how we're going to miss Xavier Lucas the first half of the game based upon the fact that may target our true freshman if we can get a Damari Brown or OJ Frederic at 100%?
No, I could definitely see that. I mean, bring a guy like Xavier Lucas before the season started, he was going to be that dominant cornerback to kind of shut down one side of the field. So losing him for a whole half is definitely something that we're going to miss. But when you really look at this Indiana team, I think the real key is going to be fun. Just our corners are going to have to be fundamentally sound, kind of similar to how we played Ole Miss, where they kind of got the ball off very quick, but they threw most of their passes to the sideline, right? Jump balls to the sideline, and they got it out very quick. Indiana and Fernando Mendoza is probably the best quarterback in college football of throwing that exact pass, right? He's very accurate. He pinpoints the ball perfect. And then to your point, a lot of his wide receivers, they're not the flashiest guys. They're not the big name 5-star wide receivers, but they know how to fundamentally catch a football and they know how to place their body in the right spots to be able to use their body frame in the right way. And I think Jabari Antoine, anytime he's on the field, I would think Kirk Cignetti and Fernando Mendoza are probably going to go at him as much as he can. But I will say this, Jabari Antoine, he's a dog. The more you go after a guy like him, he's gonna get more and more hungrier to just want to be out there. I think a guy like OJ Romanis Frederic, he's going to be the big key for us in that secondary. I know Jacoby Thomas, Keontae Scott, and even Poyser and Fitzgerald, those have been the flashy names throughout the playoffs. But I think someone like OJ, even specifically wide receiver Surratt for Indiana, that's going to be a huge matchup, in my opinion. They also use their slot wide receiver very well. And most slot wide receivers you would think are these 5'8", 5'9", crafty wide receivers like a Malachi Tony, but their slot wide receiver is actually a more durable 6'2", 6'3" type of wide receiver. So that's going to be something to watch out for. But I think at the end of the day, time of possession is something that a lot of people are overlooking. Both teams are 5th and 6th in the nation at time of possession. So I think the way we use the time of possession against Ole Miss, I think this is going to be a factor where we may be able to do that again with Indiana. The key is going to be is anytime we are in the red zone, we are going to have to get 6 points and not have to settle for 3 or nothing at all like we did with Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's going to be a rock fight this game. I do think it's going to be that way. I think it's two teams that mirror each other. But Cignetti, went to the portal, but he went again with veteran players, which I think is kind of advantageous because at the end of the day, the body type of a 19-year-old versus a 22, 23, even in some cases 24-year-old, it's not the same, right? In terms of muscle density, etc. So that's where I think could be an issue. Again, I am concerned if we do have Jabari Antoine out there as a true freshman against one of their bigger wide receivers. Keelan Black is an interesting character because he is incredibly jacked, man. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful, but he's definitely not Kewan Lacey. How do you think Miami is going to defend a guy like Kewan Black that's really good in short yard situation, but occasionally can break one?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not worried at all with their running game. I think it fits great into Heatherman's scheme and game plan. I don't think we've had an issue all year really stopping the run. I think a guy like Amon Moten is going to be really key for us, especially in the passing downs on offense. And when you really look at both of these teams too, you talked about the running back for Indiana. Both of these teams love to set up first downs. Indiana, I believe, is 3rd in the nation on first downs, and Miami's 5th in the nation on first downs. So I think one of the other keys for defenses on both sides of the field are going to be, you're going to want to get these teams behind the sticks early. And if you can do that, that's really going to test the limits of certain players and matchups throughout the game. Because I think if you could put Indiana in spots throughout the game that they've never been used to being in all season, that's really going to put some pressure on them. This is a team that really doesn't substitute a lot of players. They kind of stay with 13 to 14 guys that they rotate throughout a football game. But they're also fourth in the country on first down on defense. So if we can get those 6 to 7 yards of pop with Mark Fletcher on first down, or even, get those extended run plays with a Keelan Marion or a Malachi Tony, that's really going to put Indiana in a bind where they're going to be behind the sticks a lot, and they're going to be playing from behind and having to rotate guys that aren't used to playing. And as we know, once you get to that third and fourth quarter in that Florida humidity, things get a little bit rocky and hard rock.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. Um, in the case of Carson Beck had a pretty solid game. Missed a couple throws, but he had a pretty solid game against Ole Miss, and that drive is one for the ages. And how much of an X factor is Beck going to have to be in this game if, let's say, they do happen to slow down Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown a little bit?
I actually think Carson Beck's last performance was probably one of his best games of the year.
Okay.
I just think from a clutch standpoint,
Oh, definitely,
and really,
yes.
and really when we needed the opportunities to strike, he was able to do that. I think if he does something very similar to how he played last game, this game, I think we should be fine. Like we mentioned before, I thought the defense had a lot of opportunities to create some points for us and put us in a lot more better field position opportunities. So, I mean, you talk about 2 out of those 4 interceptions that we drop. You catch those, you're talking about a 14 to 17 point swing,
Yeah.
and also putting Beck in the offense in a lot more uh, feasible matchups for the offense. But I think going to the Indiana matchup, I think don't don't do more than you need to do. I think him and Fernando Mendoza are really going to have to mirror each other throughout the football game, and I think the key is going to be no turnovers. Indiana does a very good job at deflecting a lot of passes, and anytime they do deflect the ball, it seems like it ends up in one of their defenders' hands. So you want to be able to limit those turnovers as much as possible. And they also, special teams wise, a crazy stat, they got 6 blocks, 3 block punts and 3 block kicks.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that I think a lot of fans overlook. But I know Mario and his staff definitely hone in on special teams, but that's going to be something to look out for.
Yeah, the national media is really giving Indiana a lot of credit. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, they won 38-3 and they embarrassed Oregon in the following game. But statistically speaking, I mean, yeah, I know some of those yards were in garbage time. They weren't that far apart. Oregon spotted 28 points and turnovers and special teams miscues to Indiana. Um, so I think that's a factor that some of these pundits are forgetting as far as the game goes. But you can't, like, we made a couple mistakes and penalties. How important is special teams going to be for Miami? Since you just mentioned that they do block punts, they do get their hands up in the air, and so on. So how important is special teams going to be in this game?
I think it's going to be huge. I think one, you can't make any mistakes on your end. I think anytime we do get into a field goal attempt, you're going to have to get those 3 points. I thought we saw with the Ole Miss game, even though we missed a field goal, I thought it was very crucial where an Ole Miss kicker who went into that game where he was one of the best kickers in the nation, if he would have made that field goal, that could have been a very different ball game at the end of that football game where Ole Miss really could have just settled for another 3 and they could have possibly won the game. Going into this Indiana game, you're going to have to take any points you can. So anytime there are opportunities to strike in the field goal, you're going to have to Carter Davis, go 100% in that aspect. And, I think Malachi Tony, there's been those moments where he's just been this close from breaking one. And of course, this being the national championship, I got the Devin Hester vibes feeling where going back to the Ohio State versus Florida game, Ted Ginn, first play of the game, returning the kick. I need that type of moment for Malachi Tony. But I think at the end of the day, we can't make the mistakes. You got to be able to play mistake-free football against this Indiana team because, like we mentioned before, these people don't make mistakes very often. And when another team makes mistakes, they usually capitalize on every single one.
Okay. Before we move on to the next subject, I do want to do a little quarterback transfer portal talk. Sorry, Rob. I do want to talk about the transfer portal a little bit. I saw your comment earlier. In general, Fernando Mendoza really took a leap this year as far as his quarterback play goes. Different when he was in Cal. Obviously, he won the Heisman Trophy. I think he's a little more athletic than people are giving him credit for. And I think he's more athletic, honestly, than Julian Sain. I think he's able to get out the pocket more, and he could kill you with his legs if need be. If you're Corey Heatherman, how do you make sure that Fernando Mendoza doesn't break contain and get loose on you for like 10, 15 yards to get himself a first down?
I would play their defensive scheme similar how they played Saiyan. I don't think you have to do too much. He's not going to be elusive like a Marcel Reed or Trinidad Chambliss. So I think that's one thing that benefits Miami going to this into this game. There's a lot of certain things that I think Heatherman had to scheme and game plan for in prior matchups that he's not going to have to do in this matchup against Indiana. And like I mentioned before, I think the key is going to be to get those tackles of Indiana off balance and to be able to create Fernando Mendoza to at least be able to go on the run. Because once he moves from his spot, that's when he becomes a little bit inaccurate. He's a guy that he gets in his spot and he's able to set his feet. He's pretty much on the dime and he's dead accurate. You got to be able to get him on the run. And Wesley Basaint, knows a little bit about Fernando Mendoza, as we know against Cal last season. So I'm not
Yeah.
really too worried if he wants to run a couple times because I think he does remember last time he ran against the U. He got popped a couple times. So let him do that if he wants to. And we'll see if his little brother wants to come in and save him.
You think he has nightmares of Wesley Basaint every so often, right?
Yeah. It's
That's
either
quite
him or Ruben Bain. I remember Miami Central playing Columbus a few years back, and Ruben Bain doing the same thing to him as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay, a little transfer portal talk, if you don't mind. Can we get a little bit of
Yeah,
transfer portal talk?
yeah, for
All right.
sure.
All right. So the news broke. We don't get Sam Levitt. Okay. We don't get Brandon Sorsby as well. And then the quarterback out of North Texas goes over to follow his coach. And Diddle Raiola signs with the Oregon Ducks. All right. So what's your take on what's going on with the portal? Will Mario Cristobal low key maybe get another quarterback in here, another veteran quarterback? I heard the guy from Missouri, but I really don't know how he'd fit in, to be honest with you. Does he do that, or do we ride with Emery or Luke Nickel for the 2026 season?
First and foremost, I don't necessarily agree with the overall process of how they're going about things at the quarterback position. Kind of
Okay.
the delicacy and kind of the timing of things. It seems like we've been a little bit, not a little bit, we've been a lot more than a little bit behind the eight ball when it comes to the quarterback position in the portal. But at the same time, I do understand the message, and that's, hey, look what's in front of us right now. Let's worry about winning a national championship, and the rest will fall into place. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I love portal. I love recruiting just as much as anybody else. You win this national championship on Monday, Will. You can be quarterback next year. He gets a free mulligan after winning a championship. You might as well develop Darion Coleman, Amory Williams, Luke Nickel, whoever you want. That's fine at this point. Now going back to your original question, Drew Mestamaker, Brendan Sorsby, Sam Levitt. Those were essentially Miami's top three quarterbacks from the jump going into the transfer portal. We didn't really necessarily know where we were going to end up and how far we were going to go into the playoffs. Thankfully, we've been winning, right? But at the same time, all it's done is put us behind the eight ball because of the schedule, unfortunately. And any team from this point forward, if you win football games, it's actually jeopardizing you and not benefiting you in the long run when it comes to this portal stuff. Luckily, you're seeing teams like LSU, Indiana, Oregon, and others that were still in the playoffs still make pretty major moves, which again goes back to my point earlier where I don't necessarily agree with the process, but I do understand. Now, when guys like Messamaker, Sorsby, and Levitt, when you go all in on those type of guys, knowing and understanding already going into the process that one, you're already behind the eight ball, and two, there's already schools that have more than a leg up. Almost seems like they're dead on set and going there, right? So I understand you're trying to at least chip at it and at least see what you could get. The Sam Levitt thing going into the Texas A&M game, I already knew that we were trying to go after Levitt, but the rumors I was hearing behind the scenes was that his agent was kind of playing the money game and just trying to see who was going to be the highest bidder. We weren't really necessarily buying that at the time. We were like, dude, kick rocks, or essentially, we're not worried about it right now. Let us focus on Texas A&M. We'll get back to you later. You saw how the Sam Levitt saga turned out. He ended up going to Lane Kiffin. I think that's a perfect match in heaven. Both of those guys are very similar in a lot of ways. But Sam Levitt definitely had an offer and an opportunity to be Miami Hurricanes' next quarterback. And, there were some rumblings behind the scenes that he verbally agreed to it and then turned around and went elsewhere. That's on Sam Levitt. But I think at the end of the day, the options that we currently have now, well, there's not very many. When you look at the likelihood of some of these guys like a CJ Bailey, that if maybe you kick the tires on early in the process, maybe now he's already gotten guys like Chance Robinson and others to go to NC State. He's probably not going anywhere. Dylan Raiola, to your point, just went to Oregon. They were trying to get Ty Simpson from the NFL, similar to how they did with Cam Ward and Carson Beck. That didn't work out, obviously, after today. I think at this point, you're going to have to try to kick the tires back with a guy like maybe John Mateer, someone that hasn't verbally announced that he is coming back to Oklahoma for another year. Maybe someone like Noah Fatia from Arizona. He's another guy. DJ Lagway, even though he's committed to Baylor right now, he hasn't actually signed. I'm just thinking of quarterbacks that, even though they're currently committed to other places or the quarterback there, until they sign that new NIL deal, everything's off the table. But I think that's where Miami's going to have to go. They're going to have to get desperate and start swinging the fences at some of these other guys that maybe they didn't think they had an opportunity at. I know the guy, Landon Clark, that ended up committing to LSU. We tried to kick the tires on him the last 24, 48 hours, but obviously we were late on that one as well. But yeah, man, we're kind of stuck with only a couple options, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I mean, it is what it is. I think if you win the national championship, like you said, I totally agree with you. I think the next quarterback gets a mulligan as far as what next season goes. My thing with the portal is I just think that even though we're gonna have a great offensive line next year, it's gonna be a lot of new pieces starting in real games. So you're gonna have Jackson Campbell probably taking over for CC, and then you're gonna have a new right, you have a new right guard, you have a new center, you're gonna have a new left guard, and we still don't know the verdict is on Markel Bell yet. Maybe not a new left guard, but you know what I mean, that rotation between Okunola and maybe McCoy. But the bottom line is, though, it's going to be a pretty new line, for the most part. So I think like a veteran quarterback, that's going to have good protection, but kind of knows how to navigate in general would be good. And then the following year, the line is more experienced, and you could bring in like a Luke Nickel or Darian Coleman, whomever you want to start. So that's why I wanted a portal guy with experience to kind of keep us rolling, like we're doing this year. But hey, man, if you got to roll with Emory, I mean, let's hope he takes that next step. I've heard, my biggest concern about Emory, I still have flashbacks on the Pop-Tart Bowl, and I still remember when he came in against Bethune, he got popped, because he stepped in the pocket, held onto the ball too long. I still have that vision of Emory. I've heard otherwise, and in practice, he actually practices very well. Luke, I heard, is good gunslinger, a little turnover prone. I've heard that about Luke, in general. But I mean, that's just my biggest sort about Emory in general. But like him, I think he's a dog. I think he studies the offense very well. He knows it very well. I think he's a hard worker. But man, that Pop-Tart Bowl did really go did really like give me some bad vibes, man. From that perspective, amongst other things.
Yeah, I think the way Mario and the staff has built this team, as we're seeing today, you don't really need the flashy quarterback. As great as Cam Ward was for us, it wasn't the flashy quarterback that got us to the promised land of where we're at today. It was the game manager, the guy that makes the right reads, the right plays all the time, and doesn't really put the ball in harm's way most of the time, and Carson Beck. And I think the next 2 to 3 years, I think you can really work with a game manager guy like Emory Williams, just because of how this defense is set up, as long as you have Heatherman. And then, of course, what Mirabal and Cristobal has been able to do with the offensive line. Yeah, we're going to be a little bit more young next year, and a little bit more unproven. But, you got one of the best teachers in the game in Coach Mirabal. And I think a guy like Jackson Cantwell, I think it's going to fit right in and probably start right away. He's already getting some early practice reps right now, which is a huge, huge leap for his progress, and someone like Cantwell. Then you mentioned the left tackle position. Who knows what happens with Markel Bell? I know he was able to, I believe he did get the extra waiver, or he at least went the extra mile to at least try to get that waiver. But now, with the way he's been playing in this playoffs, there's no telling what kind of draft grade he may get back when this is all said and done. Very similar to Mark Fletcher. I think those are two names in particular that, even though they kind of announced or pre-announced that they were going to come back. I think those are two guys that after this run is over, you may want to reconsider and relook at that grade. And it may be best for both of those guys to go to the NFL. I mean, I would love for both of those guys to stay, but you got to really look at the future and kind of what the money situation and where you could possibly end up at the next level. But I think at the end of the day, you look at our schedule next season. I think a guy like Emory Williams could definitely at least get you 8 wins.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Okay, so Gary Gonzalez, who's been very active in the chat, he has a few comments. I want to get your take on this one a little bit. Should be tampering? No, no. Miami will get a death penalty if they catch us tampering. That's for sure. The NCAA will look for anything to do that. Jordan Seaton is somebody that people have been talking about. Okay, we were on him recruiting him. He ends up at Colorado. Decides to go into the transfer portal. What are your thoughts on Seaton as a possibly plug into this offensive line next season?
I think he's a day one starter. I think he deserves the money that has kind of been floating around on the timeline, around $2 to $3 million. I think I think he's an instant impact guy. The key is going to be is Markel Bell coming back, right? And I think again it goes back to any team being in the playoffs currently. You kind of have bigger fish to fry right now, where you got smaller programs who really don't have to worry about much, like Florida, that are already kind of chopping the wood at someone like Jordan Seaton to go up here in Gainesville. And they will offer him that $2 to $3 million. So that's going to be something to watch out for. I do know that Miami is definitely interested in Jordan Seaton. He definitely has relationship and ties to players on the team, like Francis Manoa and a few other guys.
Yeah.
You see clips of him practicing with those guys in the IPF prior to the season. But yeah, I think if Markel Bell ends up declaring for the NFL draft, I think it's pretty certain that Seaton probably going to end up filling that role. That's going to be easy sell for Mirabal and Cristobal for someone like Seaton. But again, that's going to be a wait and see approach because we still got football to be played, and then after that, we can see what Markel Bell decides.
Awesome. Gary, I'm happy that Jarquez decided to come to Miami. I covered his recruitment, and his dog. He's going to be a plug and play guy as well for next season as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
I've seen him play a few times up here in Gainesville at Newberry High School right here in my backyard, and had the pleasure of interviewing a few times. And Mario and the staff was the first school and coach to ever land a helicopter at Newberry High School. And when they landed that helicopter, it was like a scene out of a movie. Jarquez Carter was telling me that everyone in the school pretty much ran up to the windows, was trying to figure out who it was, people gathering around like it was a huge parade, like the Grinch had just came to Whoville. And I tell you what, we didn't get him the first time, but I'm glad that this staff continued to chop wood, and I'm glad Jarquez Carter is back where he belongs, and we continue to build the trenches, which we definitely need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing you can say about Coach Cristobal, but the one thing you cannot say that man does not know how to evaluate talent. I think he's one of the best, not a top three, maybe not number one talent evaluator in college football. He's on guys early before anybody offers them. He's on guys early, so that's the one thing I will say about Coach, man. He has an unbelievable eye for spotting talent in every position, not just an O line, man. I'm talking about like defense and wide receiver, quarterback as well. So I got to give the man credit.
Yeah, I think Mario and the whole staff deserves credit, especially this year with the transfer portal. I mean, look, we hit on about 70 or 80% of our guys that we brought in. And I think most of your impact guys on this football team were from the transfer portal. You had a good mix of guys, like Francis Malachi, Ruben Bain, and a few other guys that obviously were homegrown guys, but your Jacoby Thomases, your Keontae Scotts, your Carson Becks, those guys were huge impacts to this football team this year.
Yeah. Longstreet was a 4 or 5 star coming out of high school, but I think too many years of eligibility. I think it could hurt your quarterback room, so that's why I'm not on that train. But Hassan, thank you for chiming in on that. I'd rather have a veteran one and done, and then you can really develop your quarterback room altogether. Brad, thank you so much for joining me tonight, man. I know you're a busy guy. You've been all over the place, so let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate you always for having me on, man. You can find me on Twitter, or X as they call it, at Tejeda Brad. That's at TEJEDABRAD. And other than that, man, you can find me on YouTube every now and then on Locked On Canes with Alex Dono. And then, of course, on 305 Sports as well, man. So I appreciate you as always.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Brad, for coming on. You definitely have to come on after the national championship, win or lose. I want to get your take to see how you felt about the game, and we look forward to what we look forward to for next season.
Absolutely, man. I'll definitely stop by. I got a score prediction: 27-21 Canes.
There we go. I'm actually with you on that one, man. I think it's going to be a one touchdown affair. Oh, before we go, Hassan wants to chime in. What do you think about Miami's chances landing Damon Wilson? I think that deal is. I think that's a done deal, man. I think that he's staying in Washington. They basically told him, "You're not going, or we're suing you." That's pretty much. That's pretty much what they told the kid, and I think he conceded.
Yeah, I know Miami definitely probably tried to kick the tires on that one.
Yeah, I agree.
But hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, Brad, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please go follow Brad on all his platforms. And please, whenever he's on Locked On Kings, check it out. He brings a lot of info and he brings a lot of knowledge over to Alex Donald's channel of Locked On Canes. And once again, thank you, Brad. Once again, we will have you on again, win or lose, after the Natty. Thank you so much, everybody. And ladies and gentlemen, if you like today's episode, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to 305 Sports Now. For Brad Tejeda, I am Will. God bless. See you soon. Go Canes. Let's bring it home. Bye, everybody.
Go Canes.
Go Canes. Brad, thank you.